رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. First of all, I thank Imam Hussain organization and Mahfil Zainab for organizing this meeting. And it is important to know one of the most important imams. Although all imams are important, all imams are imams, but Imam Hussain has some unique attributes and some unique qualities. And we can understand the influence of Imam Hussain alayhi salam throughout the history after his martyrdom. So, before we start, I start with a saying for Imam Ali alayhi salam. He speaks to Kumail. He says, Ya Kumail, ma min harakatin illa wa anta fiha muhtajun ila ma'rifa. O Kumail, there is no moving or movement by you unless you need knowledge, you need to know about it. So any movement, any moving we have in our life, we have to be aware of what we are doing. And we have to know exactly the action we are taking, the purpose for this action, and the result for this action. So we need these types of understandings and informations. There is another saying for the Prophet ﷺ. He says, أَفْضَلُكُمْ إِيمَانًا أَفْضَلُكُمْ مَعْرِفًا. The best of you in Iman is the best of you in knowledge and understanding. So if we want to increase our faith and our Iman, we cannot avoid the knowledge. We must have knowledge, informations about faith, about religion. So we start the subject. The main title of our subject is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The subject has been divided into two parts. The first part is, as you know, the main title of our subject is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So the title has two terms. The first term is Imam, and the second term is Hussain alayhi salam. So we will talk about this title in two parts. We will talk about the first part, about the Imam, because we know that Imam Hussain is Imam, and then we talk in the second part about Imam Hussain alayhi salam himself. So in the first part, when we talk about Imam or the subject of Imamat, we have to go back to the purpose for creating the humankind and creating the mankind. And then the need for the prophethood, the mission of prophets. Then we move into the need for the imamat, qualities of the imams, the duty of the imams. There are some differences. We will talk about them in regard to the differences between the imam and the prophet. And lastly, we'll talk about status. Status means the spiritual positions of each imam, the status of the imams. We'll talk about it, inshallah. And in the second part about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, first we will talk about different approaches in life of imams. We have 12 imams, 12 leaders, and every imam has a specific approach in his life, a specific behavior towards circumstances, towards the rulers, towards the society at that time. And then we will talk about degrees of status of the imams. And we will move into specifically Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the unique qualities of him. And we will end, inshallah, with this question that how could we apply Imam Hussain alayhi salam in our life today? So we'll start with the first part. What is imamat? First of all, the question, what is the purpose, what is the aim for creating the humankind? When we look at the Quran, easily, we can find this clear verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. This is a clear, obvious title for the purpose of creating the humankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the humankind so that he worship him. So the ayah is like this: وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِي, to worship me. This is the ayah. So when we stop at the end, it doesn't mean that the sukoon is the actual haraka for the last word, لِيَعْبُدُون. Because if the sukoon is the actual haraka for the ya'budun, the meaning of the verse will be that the aim for creating the mankind, the humankind, is to worship. But to worship who? It doesn't say. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَعْبُدُونِي. So the aim of creating the humankind is to worship me, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not general worshipping. But here, to worship, what is the meaning of worship? Worshipping. We have a verse from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam relates to this particular verse. We have a saying from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam who relates to this verse particularly. He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ لِيَعْبُدُونِي أي لِيَعْرِفُونِي. يَعْبُدُونِي means to know me, Why he says لِيَعْرِفُونِي? This is very obvious that if we want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to know Him first. So we need to know whom we should worship. And also we need to know how do we worship. How should we worship? So by knowing that our duty is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not enough for us, for me as a human. So I have to know, I have to worship whom. There is a God saying, worship me. Who is this God that I should worship Him? Then I have to know, how should I worship Him? This is very important, because every person should use his own way of worshiping, his own way of acting upon worshiping his God or his Lord. So we need these informations. The information of who should we worship and how we should worship. Why do we need to know that? There are few reasons. Because the human is limited in his sources of understanding. We have sources of understanding. Our sources of understanding includes these 5 senses plus the intellect. So if we collect all the information we receive through these sources, still there are many informations that we cannot reach them, we cannot understand them. So we are unable to understand everything. So we need the source of the Creator, the source of revelation, the source of God to inform us about those things that we are unable to reach, unable to understand. There are things like angels. Angels, we cannot understand them, we cannot see them, we cannot have information about angels, about life after death through these sources. We cannot feel them through our senses. We cannot prove them through our intellect. We cannot prove how we live after death. Intellectually, rationally, we may understand there is a necessity for having life after death. But how this life applies to us, what are the descriptions of that life? We have no means of understanding these informations except from the Creator Himself. So the unseen world, we cannot reach them through these sources we have. There are limitations in understanding the goodness and the badness of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us intellect. Through our intellect, we can understand the badness of few things and the goodness of few things. For example, every person, he knows that honesty is good, something good, regardless of faith, regardless of believing in God, believing in any religion. Every intellectual person, rational person, can understand that saying the truth is good, lying is bad, oppressing is bad, being just is good. So we have some power of understanding the goodnesses and badnesses of things, but not completely. Not everything. There are many things the human, through his intellect, is not able to understand the goodness and badness of things, of those things. And those things are the majority. So the power of the intellect in knowing the goodness and badness of things is limited to very few things. The majority, he is not able. Or for example, understanding the system of rewarding and punishing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How Allah rewards his servants, how Allah rewards his believers, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the faithful people. We don't know. And we can't understand these things by ourselves. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes the evil people, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes the sinners. The human has no means to reach these informations. So here we need the channel that is connected to him directly. This channel is called the channel of, you can call it revelation, you can call it prophethood, you can call it messengerhood. We need a channel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has to make this channel. When we say he has to, it is part of his wisdom. When we say that he is wise, it is part of his justice when we say that he is just. So he has to provide us with these informations. So this is the title of why do we need for messengers or prophets. According to this part, when we look at the Quran, then we can find out mission of the prophets or the responsibilities of the prophets. One thing that we have to bear in mind, that the message of all prophets are one. We do not see any differences in their messages, in their foundations of the message. The foundation is one, although it could appear in various ways. Sometimes in the way of Moses, for example, peace be upon him, Musa alayhi salam, in the way of Ibrahim at his time, in the way of Yusuf at his time, in the way of Isa alayhi salam at his time, and lastly in the way of our Prophet. But the foundations of the message are the same. So when we look at the Quran, we do a research in the Quran, we see that there are three main responsibilities for all the prophets. The first one is the Tawheed. You can see tens of verses in the Quran talking about different prophets. They used to call their people for worshipping Allah sincerely, not worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worship Allah, no one else. In different way of presenting the sentence and the verse in the Quran. You see in different surahs, when Allah talks about different prophets, about Musa alayhi salam, about Nuh alayhi salam, about Ibrahim, all the prophets, all of them, they used to call for the sincere worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is called the Tawheed. And one example, in Surah Al-Nahl, verse number 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. We have sent for every group of people, every nation, a messenger. What is the main message for these messengers? أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. So the message is not only worship Allah, the message is worship Allah and do not consider other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is very important, the second part. So in all verses of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the calling of prophets for worshipping Allah for their people, Allah adds this part, worshipping Allah and don't worship the Taghut. And don't consider the Taghut. Don't consider the Taghut to apply the sincerity and the divine unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the Tawheed. The second purpose or the second mission for all the prophets is to give the good news and to warn the people. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 165, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, رُسُلًا مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ. Rusulan means all the messengers. So all the prophets, all the messengers, they have a unique and united title of message, which is مُبَشِّرِينَ مُنذِرِينَ. مُنذِرِينَ مُبَشِّرِينَ. Warning and giving the good news. The third mission for the prophets, for all the prophets, is applying the justice in the society. And this has been mentioned clearly in Surah Al-Hadid, verse number 25, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا. We have sent, Rusulana means all our messengers, بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ, with the clear signs. وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. And we have sent down with them the book and the balance. Why? Why we send all these messengers? Why we send all these books and constitution, balance, in order the people apply justice. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. So this is the aim of sending all the messengers. And in Surah Ash-Shura, verse number 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks our messenger, our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he asked him to tell the people, to tell them, وَأُمِرْتُ لِأَعْدِلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. I have been ordered to apply justice among you. Of course, this applies to our Prophet, but the verse in Surah Al-Hadid, Allah is talking generally about all the prophets, all the messengers, that one of the main aim of sending them is applying the justice. The question here, so these are the aims. Calling the people for Tawheed, warning the people, giving them good news, and applying justice. So the question, we know that there is end for sending prophets. This, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said it in the Quran clearly, that our Prophet, he is the last of all prophets. There is no prophet after him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drew a line at the time of our Prophet, being him the end of sending any prophet. So what will happen to the people? So the people need to know their way. The people, they need to apply the aim of sending all messengers, like the justice. The people, they want to know what is good, what is bad. The people to know, they need and they want to know the Tawheed, that all messengers, they came for teaching people the Tawheed and worshipping Him sincerely, how could we worship him sincerely in the absence of prophets? You may say, so our last prophet, he brought us a book, which is the Quran, and the Quran says clearly that this book contains everything. تبيانا لكل شيء. There's a verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this book is explanation for everything. When Allah says كل شيء, means whatever you can call it a thing, it is in this book. Whatever you can call it a thing, it is in this book. And Allah has explained it in this book. So you say we have the complete book. And we have the sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's enough for us. So this is the answer for the question. What will happen in the absence of the prophethood, in the absence of the Prophet? Here, again, we cannot accept this argument, we cannot accept this answer that in the absence of the Prophet, so we can apply the teachings in the book and the sayings said by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? First of all, still we go back to the reason why do we need the Prophet. Here as well we say our intellects, although powerful, can understand things, but yet unable to understand many things. So our intellects are really limited. So when we go back to the book, to the Quran, we cannot understand many things. Yes, we know that everything in the book, but can I understand those everything? Can I find those everything in the Quran? Me as a person, you as individual, every individual, can every individual understand this book? Although the Quran says that we have sent this book very clear. Yeah, it is very clear, but at the same time, when it contains everything, it means there are things that we cannot understand them. The Quran himself or itself says that in this Quran there are verses which are very clear and there are verses are not so clear. So you have to find out. And when we go back to the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, we say that we see that there are many explanations for many verses in the Quran that we couldn't understand them without his explanations. And by passing the time from the demise of the Prophet, from the time of the death of the Prophet ﷺ until now, we see there are many, many explanations for the Quran has been written, has been printed out, and day by day, year by year, new ideas, new informations are derived from the Quran. So it means that the more the time passes, the more we understand. It is like an ocean that we cannot reach all its informations. Additionally, the book by itself cannot be a guidance for the society. This is obvious. Can a constitution, can a law be enough for a country without a government, without a president, without a team of people who apply these instructions in the law? It is impossible. So just by having a book of law is not enough for the society to be guided. So we need a guider. Also, we know that throughout the history, there are many rulers, they changed